Hello Year 3, welcome to the Week 6 Maths tutorial. This week our focus is going to be on measuring. In particular, for the first 3 days of this week, you will be measuring mass, which is a bit like learning how much things weigh and learning how to use the scales, how to read the scales. These are my kitchen scales. Now, yours might look a little bit different to this. There are lots of different types of measuring scales out there that you could use. In school, we have some that look a little bit like this, but we have others that look nothing like this. Ask your parents what type of measuring scales you have in the house. It could be that you have some digital scales that will look completely different. Those will not have a round face on it like this. We're going to be talking about grams and kilograms. Now, you know enough to know that the word kilo in front of the measurement means 1,000. So we have done this before with meters and kilometers, and so you know that kilo means 1,000 of something. So if we're talking about grams and we're talking about kilograms, you know that a kilogram is going to be 1,000 grams. Let's take a look at what that means on this scale. There are all sorts of numbers here. You can ignore lots of them. Let me show you the ones we're focusing on. We will be focusing on the ones on the outside of the scale. These ones here. There's number 1, that's important to us today, and number 2, and number 3, and number 4. Those are important because it is those big black numbers that are telling me my kilograms. Remember, a kilogram is 1,000 grams. So that must mean that anything that is less than 1 kilogram is going to be less than 1,000 grams. Let's take a look then at what else the scale is showing me. I can see also on this outside circle of numbers that I've got some numbers here. I've got 800, 600, 400 and 200. So what exactly does that mean? Now, we know that 1,000 grams, if we were to find half of 1,000, that would be 500, so 500 grams. Can you see where 500 grams would be on my measuring scales? Take a close look. Hopefully, those of you who have spotted the numbers on the outside circle will see that 500 must be in between 400 and 600. So we're looking at this longer line here. It doesn't have 500 written on there, but it doesn't need to. And that's because I've got the 400 this side of it and 600 that side of it. And if you notice, it's only counting up in 200s. 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000, which of course is 1 kilogram. Right, I've got some things here that I would like to weigh, and it might be a good idea for you to have pen and paper because I'm going to put these items on the scales and give you a chance to make a note of how much each item weighs. Now, I've got a bag of rice here. Let's pop it on my scales. There we go, just about fits on. Let's go up close to my scales. Can you see how much my bag of rice weighs? What is the mass of my bag of rice? Hopefully you can see that it is pointing on the large one, which means 1 kilogram. Let's move on. That was a nice, easy one to begin with. Now, look, I've opened some of these other bags. Here's my cashew nuts. I've had some out of here. Let's see what I've got left. Oh, it's less than the other one. So let's see what we've got. Can you read the scale? Now, the important thing with scales is looking at the intervals in between the numbers. So those are the divisions. We need to know what each interval actually means and how many it is worth. So I can see from this that the red indicator has gone past the 200 grams, not on the 400, and it's not quite on the number in between 200 and 400. Do you know what that number is in between 200 and 400? What's halfway in between those numbers? It's 300. So I can see that actually my cashew nuts aren't quite on the 300 mark. So how do we work out exactly what they are? Well, that means then that we need to look at the smaller divisions in between the 100. So if we think about this space, this division in between 200 and in between 300, you can see that we have smaller lines marked out. Now, how many lines are there? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, but it divides that section into 5. 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections, 4 sections, 5. There are 5 intervals in between every 100 grams. That means then that I can divide my 100 into 5. So how many 5s go into 100? The answer is 20. Each one of those small intervals in between the small lines is worth 20 grams. So with that information, can you work out how heavy my cashew nuts are? Let's see. I've got 200, then I need to count in 20s, don't I? 20, 40, 60, and then I can see that the red dial is in front of the 4th small line there, which means that it must be 80. So I have 280 grams of cashew nuts. Okay, let's look at some others. Next, let's try this pasta. Again, I've opened it, so I'm not sure how much is left. Okay, take a look. What do you think? I think that red line is absolutely over the top of the longer line, and that means that it must be 400 grams. Well done if you got that. Okay, I couldn't resist doing this for something really heavy. So here we are, we've got my lovely old kettle and I've filled it with water. So this is quite heavy. I've just carried it through from the kitchen, so I know it's heavy. I think it's heavier than anything else that we have measured so far. Take a look and let's go through it bit by bit. Whoa, look at that. My red scale, my red indicator has gone almost halfway around my dial. Let's take a look. Start with those big numbers, the kilograms. Do you remember I said those are our big numbers around the edge, and I can see 2. So we've gone past the number 2. So we've got 2 kilograms here. That's quite heavy. But we've got a bit more than that. We then go past the next biggest line. So we said that we can see that these intervals go up in 200. So in between those numbers must be halfway, which is 100. So I can see that this has gone past 2 kilograms. It's gone past an extra 100 grams, 200 grams. Wow, this is heavier than 2 kilograms and 200 grams. How much heavier? Let's have a really close look at that dial. Now I think that that dial is on the small line that's past the 200, maybe just a little bit over. Do you remember that we said that these small divisions on my scales were worth 20 grams each? So I think as well as an extra 200 grams on top of the 2 kilograms, I also have an extra 20 grams. So it might look a little bit like this. Let's see if we can work out what it is altogether. I think I have 2 kilograms added to 200 grams, and then we have that little bit extra of 20 grams at the end. Do you know what that will look like altogether? Can you add those measurements, those weights? If you can, it should look like this: 2 kilograms and 20 grams. 2 kilograms, sorry, and 220 grams. Did you get that? Some of you might have wanted to use a decimal point and give your measurement just as kilograms. If you did, it's a bit trickier, it might have looked, or it should have looked, like that. So that number there is saying we have 2 whole kilograms. These are our whole numbers this side of the decimal point. 2 whole kilograms and then 0.22. It actually means 220 grams. Okay, nice big heavy one for us to try out. Let's look at some smaller numbers. Okay, let's try measuring these packets of apricots. They're only small, they're snack size. Really good for putting in the lunchbox. Let's see how much each one of these weighs. Take a look at the scale. Okay, so I need to count my intervals. How many small intervals past 0 has that gone? I can very clearly see the first small black line. So it's gone past 20, it's gone past 20 grams, and actually it's covering the next black line. So I think that this bag of apricots weighs 40 grams. That's 20 and another 20 makes 40. Let's see then how much it would be if we put a second packet of apricots on. So if each packet of apricots is 40 grams, do you think you know where that red line will go? Do you think you know how much it will weigh? Let's see if you're right. Watch what happens. Okay, second packet on. So the red line has moved and it's moved up and it's now covering the last small line before the big black line. So that means it's gone on to the 4th interval. So if each interval is worth 20, that must mean we've got 20, 40, 60, 80. It's on to 80 grams. That makes sense, doesn't it? 40 add 40 is 80. So do you think you know where the next stop will be when I put my next packet of apricots on? So that will be another 40 grams. We've currently got 80 add 40. Do you think you know where that red line is going to go? Take a look. Okay, it's gone over the big black line. Now the big black line is halfway between 0 and the 200 that we can see. So that big black line that it's just gone past must be worth 100. So we're over 100 grams. How much over 100? Well, how many more intervals has it gone past? And how much is each one of those small intervals worth? Now we said that those intervals, there are 4 small lines which breaks that interval of 100, it breaks it up into 5 equal spaces or equal divisions. So each one of those intervals must be worth 20 grams. Okay, so that makes sense because look, we're on the first short line after the 100 grams, so we must have 120 grams. Does that make sense? If we've got 3 packets of 40 grams, let's have a count up in 40s. 40, 80, 120. Yeah, that makes sense. What about if I put my last packet of apricots on? Where's it going to go? So that will be 4 lots of 40. Okay, it did move on another 40 grams. I know that because it moved on 2 more small black lines. Can we count? Okay, we've got the 100 marker here, plus 20, 40, and then it's covering the next black line, which is our 60, so 160. Let's take a look at what that looks like. 40, add 40 grams, add 40 grams, equals 160 grams. Okay, so hopefully that has made sense, but there's quite a lot to take in when you're looking at different scales on with different readings, different intervals. So the best thing you can do this week is to sit down, ask permission to get the kitchen scales out And perhaps sit down with an adult and go through what the scales in your kitchen are telling you, what the size of the intervals are and what the measures are, and have a go at measuring different objects, maybe from the cupboard. So have fun with it, and hopefully by the end of it you're going to be really confident about grams and kilograms, and you will enjoy this week's work. Okay, good luck with it all and take care of yourselves. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye, Year 3.